Oh, Queen Justice, where are you? Did they beat you up or no? Lock you on the ground, take the crown away from you?
Oh, Lady Liberty, red, white, and blue. Did they take your dignity with their bigotry? Teach you that you're born to lose.
Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough.
We've had enough
of all the rules you break.
We've had enough
of all the money you make.
We've had enough.
No more life gets taken.
We've had enough.
This is a proclamation.
It's been 400 years and we're 400 late. Together we stand from state to state. Going back in time won't make America great. We need justice now, people won't wait.
Action, no more distraction. Every step we take, we gain traction. If it can happen to one, it can happen to all. United we stand, divided we fall. Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough.
We've had enough
Of all the rules you break.
We've had enough
All the money you make.
We've had enough
No more life gets taken.
We've had enough
This is a proclamation.
It's gonna be better believe. Just roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough. It's gonna be tough. We all agree. We've had enough.
We've had enough
Of all the rules you break, all the money you make, no more life gets taken. This is the proclamation.
We've had enough. Trayvon Martin and Tommy Rice.
We've had enough
Michael Conrad. Every price.
We've had enough
Philando. Rihanna. George Floyd.
We've had enough
So many
How can we feel the void? How can we had enough
John Crawford. I know you've heard.
We've had enough
Sandra Bland. Come on and take a stand.
We've had enough
Sean Bell. Sean Bell.
We've had enough
Freddie Gray. Did you hear what I said?
We've had enough
This is a proclamation.
Hey everybody, I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Opening up with two powerful songs. The first one by Ryan with a reggae beat, a reggae flavor. It featured my brother Wayne McFarlane. Ryan is one of Wayne's proteges. Actually went from here to work with the Jonas Brothers as a musician, drummer, and part of their world-renowned musical venture. And then after that, the incomparable Sounds of Blackness. We've been playing that song a lot. Sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I think it speaks to the moment. We heard a couple of weeks ago the premiere. We have the premiere of their new tune. So our days question of being sick and tired of Ernie, retired from Atlanta, joining the program. My colleague Yusuf Mjini is here from St. Paul. Yusuf, you haven't met Kamal yet, but Yusuf is a world-class communicator, an educator, and a force for good in our community, both locally and nationally. Kamal and Brenda, I think you've met Yusuf in the program already. Brenda Lyle is here, who writes for Inside News, who documents these conversations. And we're pleased that we're having this conversation both through the Twin Cities channels of McFarlane Media, our platforms, but also affiliated with our national organization, National Newspaper Publishers Association. We're streaming live to the Black Press USA Facebook page. So there we go. Kamal and Yusuf and Brenda, I wanted to focus on news we've been listening to lately about the Republican Party and get your impressions. First of all, the two things that come to mind are the continued effort, successful effort so far, to derail the bipartisan hearings on the January 6th failed insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. And then the second thing is this movement across the country to create state-based legislation and rules that further restrict access to the
tragedy.
Yeah, I think we lost Al for a moment.
Why don't we go ahead and jump in?
Go
This
ahead.
continuation of what we saw during Barack Obama's 2 terms in office. In fact, it's a continuation of a 30-year plan that the Republicans put in place following the defeat of Barry Goldwater to, one, take over local elected offices, state legislatures, the birth of the American Legislative Council, ALEC, which provides legislation from the extreme right wing to Republican state legislators across the country on a weekly basis. And then they simply attach their name to it, submit it to their state legislature as their own legislative submissions. And that's where we see Stand Your Ground. That's where we see voter ID. That's where we see filibusters and a lot of the conservative legislation coming from that is mirrored across the country. And today, there are some 34 to 40 states that have restrictive voter suppression legislation that has already been passed. And Republican legislators and legislatures are doing everything in their power to try and suppress the votes of people with limited transportation, the working poor, people of color, senior citizens, and to try and prevent a legislative turnout like we had during the last state and national elections.
Yeah.
What I did, Brenda and Kamal, is I went to audio only and turned off the camera to try to preserve bandwidth. We've got some challenges, so maybe we have to all play this by ear as we go. And when you're not speaking, maybe turn off your camera, and that way we can preserve more bandwidth for the sound to come through. I noticed that your video was flickering Brenda and Yusuf was having a little bit of difficulty with your voice as well. But let's hope for the best and keep forward, keep going. I understood what you were saying, putting it in context. Kamal, what do you think? What do you see as the intent and the likelihood of success, or what do we do to resist the movement by Republicans to roll back the hands of time, to restrict, to deny the inevitable, and that is the emergence as a majority in the body politic of people of color, the transition of whites to a minority? What do you think, Kamal King?
Well, I see exactly what Yusuf has been speaking of, and it is a concerted effort on their behalf. And I learned many years ago that we are in a war with the conservatives, those who want to keep control, and it's all about the control and power for these people, the Republicans, and we see it in their refusal to investigate the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol. It's all about they want to keep power, and it's frightening to me the extent that they will go to. And Trump said before he was elected that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. And his statement is proving to be true. There have now been deaths. So yes, we are in a protracted war. I don't think they'll ever give up. These people will ever give up. And I think to answer your question with regard to what we can do, we have to be vigilant. People like myself who think that I can retire and sit back and relax, I'm finding that that is not the case. We're going to have to make sure that our people get out to the polls and vote, keep a light on what's happening, because a lot of the things that they want to do in the dark. But as we know, light cancels out darkness. So we have to keep our people informed, continue to organize, make sure that our people get out to vote. That's what I see.
Yusuf, let me have you jump back in here on the question, the latest news that Trump is saying that he might be ready to take office again, to be reinstated as early as August of this year. And that behind his attorneys, I think Powell was one of his attorneys, and also General suggesting that, number one, a Myanmar-style coup could be a possibility, could be desirable, and could be a mechanism by which Trump could be restored, and in their mind, to his rightful place as the president of our country. What do you think about that, Yusuf?
Well, they've been referring to this as the big lie ever since the November elections. And people have seen the farce in Arizona in terms of the recount. They've seen Rudy Giuliani with dye running down his cheeks from his hair, and the 60 lawsuits that were thrown out across the country alleging voter fraud and crazy lawsuits dealing with alien invasion and Mexicans coming across the border by the thousands and voting in the presidential election, and judges literally laughing those lawsuits out of court. In Wisconsin, Republican legislators want to hire the same firm that the federal government said is illegally recounting elections and tampering with the machines in Arizona. And for some unrealistic reason, there are many people in the Republican Party who still believe that Joe Biden stole the election from Donald Trump, and that Donald Trump is the rightful president of the United States, against all logic, against all science, and against all of the facts. Trump is feeding this frenzy. He fed it on January 6th, and he continues to have a stranglehold on what used to be the Republican Party. And we could very well see more violence, more attempts through the legal process. They've stacked the Supreme Court 6-3, and they're scouring, they've stacked the appeals court, and only 1% of all of the cases that go before the appeals courts make it to the Supreme Court, and they're looking for an opportunity to put a case before the Supreme Court that they think they can win. So the crazy stuff just continues to come.
Your sound is degrading, Youssef. I'm not sure what it is. Nothing changed, but your sound is degrading a little bit right now.
Okay, let me turn my camera off. We're going to see more of this crazy nonsense about, the election having been stolen from Trump and Trump continuing to be the rightful president. It's not going to cease anytime soon.
Kamal, come back in if you would, and build on that. So, you use the word, we have to be vigilant, because, you could be flippant and say there's just no way these clowns could, engineer a takeover of the government, and that they're just smoking something if they think they're going to be back in office in August. But I think, the mere fact that they had a trial run,
now we're losing you, Al.
Yeah. They are pulling at straws. Really, they're doing whatever they can to maintain power, and we can see this from the fact that the Republican legislators were in the Capitol when it occurred, and for them to not vote to have it to investigate it, I see two reasons why. One is that they already know what happened, and they don't want that revealed. And two, they want to maintain power at all costs. At all costs. It doesn't matter whether they are illegitimate or not. And then I think that what we're seeing with the general populace is the accumulation of 25 years of Rush Limbaugh and those guys speaking to these people, telling them that, everything that they, that the right wants and that the right believe. And so they're almost rabid. They're almost rabid. I don't think that you can logically deal with illogic, because they're not listening. It's no listening. They want power, and they want to maintain power regardless. Let me say this, here in Georgia, there's a continuing movement to create cities. And the pockets of cities are the pockets of whites. And they want, like in Atlanta, we have an area called Buckhead, where a lot of the stores and financial places are. And now they want to become a city. And it's happening all throughout Georgia. Pockets of whites want to create cities so that they are not under the political power of blacks who now control counties that they didn't control. So it's just a continuation of doing anything you can not to be to keep control, to keep power.
Youssef, jump in. Let's. What do you think about that?
Well, Buckhead is continually referred to as the Beverly Hills of the South because of the wealth that is located within that community, and it is also a very conservative community. On the Republicans, Al, I'm always trying to plant the seeds. I want to recommend two books. The first is by Nancy McLean. It's called Democracy in Chains: The Deep History of the Radical Right's Stealth Plan for America. and it talks about the 30-year plan that the Republicans put in place to seize political and electoral power and the Supreme Court. The second one that I want to recommend on the Republican Party is called Dark Money. It's by Jane Mayer, and it talks about the hidden history of the billionaires behind the rise of the radical right. It's called Dark Money, by Jane Mayer.
Who was the author of the first book?
The first book is by Nancy McLean.
Okay.
Democracy in Chains. They are both excellent books, and they're too thoroughly documented to debate. And they really go into the history of what the right-wing conservatives and the right-wing billionaires have done to bring about the political partisanship, the dogfight that exists in Congress, and the political shift to the right in politics. I also want to recommend a book by Timothy Tyson called The Blood of Emmett Till by Timothy Tyson. A lot of people don't realize that in 1954, when, and I'm blanking, when the sister was on the bus in Montgomery, Alabama, and the bus driver went back there and said, "You got to give me that seat." What was the sister's name, Al?
Rosa Parks.
Rosa Parks was sitting on the bus thinking about Emmett Till, who had been murdered a couple of months earlier, okay? And it was the Brown versus Board of Education, the murder of Emmett Till, and Rosa Parks' refusal to get off that bus that were the sparks that ignited the civil rights movement. But there were demonstrations and rallies held across the country about the murder of Emmett Till. And this was the signature spark that really lit the civil rights movement. And it's an incredible book. And finally, Isabel Wilkerson, who wrote The Warmth of Other Suns, has come out with a book called Caste, which compares the white supremacy in the United States with the Nazis in Germany and with caste in India. And this is an incredible historical account of the diabolical evil of white supremacy. And I guarantee if you pick this book up, you won't be able to put it down.
Yeah.
Caste, the origins of our discontent. It's beautifully written. It's an incredible historical catalog of white supremacy and the oppression of Black people in the United States. And I'm a bookworm. You know, it was a habit that I acquired at a very young age, and one that I was blessed with. And I want to encourage people to read, to study. The only things you keep are the things you share. So I share these things with everybody I know. And Al, you've gotten emails from me over the years begging you to pick up some of the materials that I've had, or read them when I can get them into an email and pass them by the censors. But Dark Money and Democracy in Chains really pulled down the pantaloons of the Republicans in terms of exposing the lengths and the depths that they have gone to take control of politics, and the right-wing billionaires behind their efforts to suppress Democrats, poor people, people of color, and the electoral process. And both fascinating books that really capture the research is incredible.
What do we do about it? What do we do?
Well, first, I think we have to study it and understand it, so that at every opportunity we can thwart it, we can counteract it, we can educate, agitate, litigate, organize, and try and do whatever we can to make sure that we minimize it. Sometimes victory means fewer defeats, okay? And if we know where these people are coming from, we can get out in front of them and prevent them from doing further damage, because they're now doing damage that will travel across generations. You know, when you look at the 6-3 margin on the Supreme Court, we're talking about something that's going to take 20 or 30 years to rectify, not something that we can change, in 3 months or in 6 months. These people are playing a long game, and we're not going to correct that. This is also the year where the census is taken into account and redistricting takes place. And if we don't organize and work within our state legislatures, we could be set back even further. And that's what Kamal was talking about in terms of Buckhead and what's happening in Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and around the country. We almost lost one of our congressional districts in the state of Minnesota. And we were the next state on the block to lose a congressional district if we hadn't got those 8,000 votes that made the difference between keeping 8 congressional districts and losing one of them and being set back to 7. So a lot of it is education, it's organization, it's agitation, it's litigation, and it's being informed, because we wind up reacting to a lot of things that are being done to us after the fact. And frequently, when we're reacting, we're too late, we're poorly organized, we're under-resourced, and we wind up, saying, gee whiz, we like you, won't you please like us back? And we're making moral appeals frequently to immoral people, who don't want to hear it.
Right.
So the only thing that people in power respect is power in return, okay? And we have to build, organize, and exercise our own power, and we have plenty, and we have to recognize it, and we have to implement and execute it, okay? Within our families, within our neighborhoods, within our communities, and within our regions.
Perfect. I mean, he said there's a mouthful there. The only thing that I want to add is that we're on the winning side. We're on the winning side. If you look at from 1950, as a matter of fact, in the 1950 in the Brown decision, the court was twisted the way it is twisted now, but they had to face the facts, and some kind of way, maybe God came down in some kind of way. They faced the facts, and they came out with that Brown decision. All right, these people who we're fighting there is nothing new. I mean, it's worldwide. It's South Africa all the way Australia. The same forces that Yusef is talking about are those same forces that control these countries that have these disparate economic disparities. The other thing that happened, first point I want to make is that we're winning, and we're going to win. Justice is going to prevail. The arc of the universe, like King said, the arc of the universe bends toward justice, and it may take a long time, but keep the faith, because where we are today is so much further. In my 70 years, I can see where we've come a very, very long way, in spite of these forces that Yusef and that we're facing today. The other thing I want to say is that the United States is in big trouble, not only internally from the internal conflicts that exist, but from external forces, China being the number one. And when you see a Chinese ambassador tell an American ambassador that you don't have that kind of power, he's telling them, I don't care what you say, you cannot move me, and there's nothing you can do to change what I'm going to do. And I think that's those forces, and the fact that pushing for equality, pushing for economic saneness instead of this capitalistic thing that we're facing today, I think that those things are going to prevail. In that cast, I read that. I continue to read the cast. I go back to it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a powerful document, very powerful, and she connects the dots beautifully.
Yeah, and another one is White Rage. Read White Rage. Have you read that one yourself?
Not yet, brother. Not
Yeah,
yet.
that's a good one too. White Rage. It explains the mentality. This whole mentality.
Al, are you back with us?
Apparently he's not. And you put yourself on. You put your mute on. What have you seen with regard to these cities, these small neighborhoods becoming cities? Have you seen that in Minnesota also?
We have,
Yeah.
and we're seeing it in terms of the redistricting around the census. We're seeing it. See, we're surrounded by the Dakotas on one side, Iowa on the other, and Wisconsin to the east. So, Wisconsin is very Neanderthal, a Republican-controlled legislature, and we're one of the few states, Minnesota, that has a bicameral legislature. We have a Democratic-controlled House, and we have a Republican-controlled Senate. And the Republican-controlled Senate does not want to let the Democratic-controlled House do anything. So we've had legislation passed since George Floyd's murder, and the Republican Senate refuses to take it up. We've had calls for a special session. We don't even have a balanced budget yet. And we have a Democratic governor, but because the Republicans control the Senate, the bills have to pass in both houses, or they go to conference committee, and there has to be a compromise between the two houses. And so the Republican-controlled Senate has a lot of the authority. They're very police and law enforcement friendly, and their mantra is no new taxes, no harm to law enforcement. And it's been very difficult. It's been an uphill battle to try and get anything passed through the state legislature. And, we have Philando Castile, Jamal Clark, George Floyd. We've just had a tremendous litany of the murder of unarmed black men at the hands of law enforcement for the past 10 or 12 years. And we've gotten chokehold bans by some local police departments, but there have been more than 900 black men unarmed killed around the country by the police since George Floyd was murdered.
Wow.
And there are 18,985 local police departments in the United States. And, the situation in Congress with a Democratic House and a Republican Senate is the same thing that we have in Minnesota. So until we can get the George Floyd Act passed in Congress that sets national standards that will impose criteria on local and state law enforcement agencies, we've got a real battle because it's one police department at a time.
Yeah.
And, I'm also vice president of the Minnesota Dakotas NAACP and a member of the executive committee of the St. Paul NAACP. And we've had a 20-year-old agreement mediated by the Justice Department with the St. Paul Police Department. We have a very good relationship with the department, but that's only one department out of about 800 in our state. We have 800 different local municipalities.
Mm-hmm.
Each department has its own body-worn camera policy, has its own either contract with a neighboring law enforcement agency or its own sheriff, police, or other law enforcement entity. So when I go fishing, I might have to drive through 80 different municipalities
Right.
to the fishing hole, and it's crazy.
Right.
Because you can't keep track of all the different policies and laws and requirements. And, when we go in town to buy bait, the police follow us in town and then they escort us out of town. Because they see three black fellas in a car or in a truck with a boat. And, even though we come to spend money, buying bait, buying breakfast, whatever we're doing, they're picking us up on the highway and following us in and following us out. It's crazy.
That's an example of the color of your skin being the weapon that they're afraid of.
Yeah.
And that's I heard this guy from South Africa, the comedian from South Africa who has a show on, and I can't.
Trevor Noah.
Yes, Trevor Noah. And what Trevor said that struck with me was that when we look at the policing in the United States, it's not a few rotten apples. The root is rotten. Yeah. It may be a few good apples, but but the root is rotten. And I had a lady who teaches at Kennesaw State University here. She was doing a study, and I haven't contacted her lately, but she was doing a study on when white people see a black face, that there is something internal that reacts, that they react to. Now, that's kind of scary. Number one, because it may be chemical, and not merely emotional and learned. But I'm sure that when police see black people, police see black people, there's a totally different reaction than when they see white people.
Well, in the book Cast, a couple of things that Isabel Wilkerson pointed out. 80% of white people have an implicit bias against African Americans. Now they believe that they're colorblind, which is a lie. The only people who I know who are colorblind are Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles. Okay, right. They're truly colorblind. Okay, right. Anybody else tells you they're colorblind is lying. Okay, right. And she says that the oppression in this country is so great that 1/3 of people of color have, implicit bias. Okay, right. Unintentional or otherwise.
Right.
And brainwashed. We've been conditioned. The slave exists in all of us. It's just closer to the surface in some and deeper in others. Okay. She also said there are no black people until they come to the United States or to the United Kingdom. Right. And likewise, there are no white people. They're Irish, they're Swedish, or they're Igbo, or they're Nigerian, or Hutu, or Twa. But when you James Baldwin wrote an essay called "The Price of the Ticket." And he said when they get to America, part of the price of the ticket is that they have to subscribe to the myth of white supremacy. Okay, that's the only way they really become American. All right, and the price of the ticket is steep and it is dear. Okay, and they pay that price too. Okay, because they buy into it, and it's the poor white boy in the trailer park whose daddy says, son, no matter how hard things get, always remember, you could be a Negro, could be worse. Okay, and they believe that. Yeah. They believe it. They grow up believing it, and they pass it on to their children. And some of us pass it on to ours.
Correct. But I like I said before, I've seen the progress that we've made as a people. I've seen the progress that we made as a people, and I believe that in the end, that I've seen us get better. We as a people, we've gotten better, and I think that we've got people in all positions, from the top all the way down to the bottom. Now, the only question is whether they will stand up, whether they will stand up when it comes their time to stand up. Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to the police, Black police are in a very difficult position.
True.
Very difficult position, because they see how these white police react. And some of them, like you said, and some of them react the same way toward us. Yeah. But this brotherhood and this silence is the thing that keeps this hatred going. And I think this police, if you're a police officer and you see you see one of your fellow officers committing a heinous act, you have to think twice whether you're going to tell, because they could turn on you. And I think that they would.
I want to agree with what you said, Kamal, and I want to invite Brenda to feel free to jump in here. No group could submit to what we have been through over the past 450 years And we have not only survived, but we have developed. Okay?
Right.
We can't go nowhere but up. We cannot go backwards.
Right.
We are the most resilient people on the planet. And we have to harness the energy, the experience, the wealth of wisdom that we have and go forward. And in greatest danger are the young people in our community today. And we have to embrace them and give them the knowledge and the support that they need to grow and develop and go forward. Brenda, what are your thoughts, dear?
I just think there's so many layers. And Yusef, I really enjoyed writing about you this past week. And I called the article, Call It What It Is. And that's what you did on the last interview. And I did list your books. I just thought that you said so much. And one of the things you said, that if we are not careful, we're going to be back where we were 3 years ago. And that's the scary thing to me. And one of the things that Dr. Peter Hayden said the other day when Al interviewed him, he said, we have to be where they are so we know what they're doing.
Yes.
Because they will lie, but then there are certain things that they cannot use the broom and sweep underneath a rug. And one of the things I think we need to start doing as soon as classes start on college campuses, we need to get to our millenniums. Because right now they're angry. My daughters are angry. They want no parts of it because they just feel we're giving in. And I said, oh no, your mother, Kamal, Burnell, all of us, Al, we were on the front line in Kansas City. And we didn't let up with the city government, anything. They heard us. And they've got to start hearing us because you're right. They are serious as a heart attack.
Yeah.
And when they have tried to keep 1619 Project out of the classes, they are scared.
Yeah.
Because young people are going to start asking questions. My students are asking questions. I taught International Baccalaureate at Lincoln Academy, and I hear a lot from my former students, and they're asking questions. And remember, some of the white kids turned in their parents during the January 6th insurrection.
Good.
So, I don't know. I'm going to keep writing. I'm going to keep researching. I appreciate the opportunity that Al McFarlane has given me because I have learned so much. But I'm going to tell you the truth. This is scary. And it's scary for our children. So we've got to do what Dr. Hayden said. We have to be where they are. And we need to clone Stacey Abrams because she's serious too.
That's a tough lady.
Come my way.
Tough lady.
Oh, yeah. I love her because I wouldn't have had a stimulus check without her.
Now, what is she going to do in Georgia? What's she going to run for, Kamal?
I think she's going to go for the governorship again.
She should.
But that book, I said White Rage, but the name of the book is White Fragility.
White Fragility.
White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo.
Yeah.
A friend of mine read it, and she was wishing that there had been more of what to do about it in the book. You know, more. She said it was very good on the descriptive end, and she was yearning for a little more in terms of the prescriptive. What do we do about it?
Yeah, that's part of it. You know, that's part of it. That's the way my wife feels when she goes to plays and they just talk about the problem. You know, she says she wants some solution. Yeah. But understanding the problem and understanding the white mind is where I dove into a couple of years ago. I wanted to understand what happened and how these people got this way. And another book Brenda, that I want you to put down is white trash. White trash. The 400-year untold history of class in America. White trash, and it's by Nancy Eisenberg, and it gives it's a description of where these white Americans came from, and what they were doing, and England. They're homeless people, the people that were homeless and their lower class people, they sent them here. They got on ships, and they wasn't all pilgrims. They got on ships and they sent them here. And that's where the Georgians, the people who were the low class whites, they ended up in Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, South Carolina.
Yeah.
Wow.
White trash, the 400-year untold history of class in America by Nancy Eisenberg.
Got it.
Yeah.
Look out. Yeah.
This is a fascinating conversation. I'm enjoying it, and I'm loving just being able to sit here and listen to the conversation. I want to throw something in. Are you guys hearing me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Let me throw something in, because you, and you probably addressed it already, Kamal, and perhaps you did too as well, Yusuf. But back to the solution side, and we all agree that they have been and are serious and will remain serious. The question is, what does seriousness mean for us? And I think, Yusuf, you did things that I believe were prescriptive in saying organize in the neighborhood, be accountable to each other, live in a way that reflects principles. But how do you and what do you articulate as the long game? And is the long game something that fits within a box parameters of the geography that we know as the United States, or is that simply one of the malleable, fluid parameters that exist in the same place and at the same time? Yes, I live in North Minneapolis, but I'm also, in Hennepin County. But I'm also in Minnesota. But I'm also in the Midwest. Oh, but I'm also in the United States. Oh, but I'm also in North America. Oh, but I'm also in the New World, right?
Yeah,
and so at some point in time, do I have the capacity to move fluidly, freely between the geographic or psychographic or cultural parameters to shape an identity and a strategy that suits me, that creates a narrative, and the narrative is one in which I win. And winning might not be what we have been taught winning is. Winning might not be that you have to lose in order for me to win. Winning could be something that says, if I can serve you better, help you be the best human being you can be, then I have won. And if that means do that without destroying myself or being destroyed in the process of enabling you to be your best self. What do you think, Yusuf?
Well, let me be real brief, Al. Number one, you asked about 15 questions. I'm going to try and take about 3 of them on. Okay. I think it starts in your family. Okay, with your, I've been with the same woman for 52 years, same 2 kids, both got good jobs, good educations, self-sufficient. The grandchildren. You start in the neighborhood, you volunteer. Everybody can do something. NAACP, local newspaper, church, community group. Volunteered for 40 years in the prisons. You and I have volunteered for about 100 different organizations. I belong to a group called Blacks for Palestine, so it's not just restricted to the United States. We did a lot around African liberation, not just African Liberation Day, 6th Pan-African Congress, and a number of other efforts to help with the liberation of Southern Africa. And I think that you got to contribute where you can. You got to contribute what you can. You have to recruit other people. The Institute for African Education once said that Black people are basically on 4 different levels. There are those who understand what time it is and are prepared to commit their lives to trying to bring about full and successful self-determination for Black people. 2, there are those who understand what time it is, but they consider any sacrifice they make as extra personal and beyond what they're required to do. 3, there are those who are basically about the business of survival and trying to make it from one day to the next. And 4, there are those who benefit from our oppression, okay? And the job of those of us who aspire or consider ourselves to be in the first group is to organize the first group, educate the second, convince the second, educate the third, and neutralize or remove from the path of our forward progress those who are in the fourth. Now, I'm not Mahmoud El-Khatib, but Richard Wright said, life is dedicated to the lonely outsiders who exist precariously on the cliff-like margins of many cultures, men and women who are maligned and criticized by Christian and pagan left and right, men and women who search desperately for a home for their hearts and a home which, if found, could be a home for the hearts of all men. So we've got to keep on searching, because Che Guevara said, and Karenga repeated, that a real revolutionary has to be a lover, because otherwise, what else are we fighting for? Okay.
That's right.
In a world in which we can live on one another. And Dr. Clark said, we want to become better instruments for living together with one another. Okay. Yeah. So we want to promote and uplift and support and recharge one another. We don't want to denigrate or criticize or chastise or try and belittle other Black people. We want to uplift and energize. And I think we need to reach out and do that where, there's enough happening in our community where, we could take a 747 and roll it down the main street in our hood, and we could jump on any one of them, okay? And every one of them could get full. There's so much that needs to be done. Right. So there's plenty for us to do, and we just need to find something that we feel good about doing and just do it. We used to say back in the 60s that the Black community is doing what you're doing, and it's not doing what you're not doing. So we just need to be about what we can do, where we can contribute, and be thankful for the opportunity to give something back, because in comparison to what our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents went through, we ain't paid no dues at all, man. You know?
Yeah,
no dues at all.
You hit it. You hit the nail on the head. When I was thinking about how you answer that question, Alvia, you start with yourself. You start with yourself, and you try to educate yourself. And then, as Yusef said, then it's your family. It's your family. Yusef, like you, I think I've got 53 years in with the same woman, 2 kids, educated. So those are things. One time my daughter told me, "You're just doing what you're supposed to do."
That's true.
I was arguing with her, and I was telling her, "Who puts the roof over your head?" Blah blah blah. She said, "Well, you're just doing what you're supposed to do." And fortunately, this is a side. When she came home with some bad grades from college one time, I said, "Yeah, you're not doing what you're supposed to do." So you start with yourself. Try to educate yourself. I've had the opportunity to travel around the world 3 or 4 times, so I've seen China come from where it was in the 1970s to where it is today, and I know how fast that they're moving. I understand that democracy may not be the best way to go forward, especially when you're in a position where you can't get nothing done. Sometimes maybe a good dictator may be better than nothing.
Read Richard Wright's letter to Kwame Nkrumah.
Right. So
I have a final thought. I know we're running out of time, but we need to answer our children why everyone can't come to the table together to save our country. These are from my students.
Our country or our people?
Our people. Okay. Our country.
It's all of that. It boils down to the end of the day, Stevie Wonder says the only thing that conquers hate is love.
Yeah.
And that comes back to us. As we, when I see white folk, I'm around, if I get around them, I'm in a restaurant or something like that, I don't give them any reason to think, to believe that they should be hating me. You know, open doors, and I find that they open doors. That love is the key. But how do you get it through all the noise?
And Kamal, you have to remember that when we were growing up as chocolate baby boomers, we knew how tough we were. You didn't have to tell us, because our teachers told us, our parents told us. And if we stepped outside of the line, not believing in that excellence, we were told not only by our parents, but by our neighbors.
Unacceptable.
Yeah.
You are who you are, and you are strong.
Yeah.
We had it.
All right, you had a good one. Yusef, man, I'm gonna have to get back in contact with you and Brenda. You know, me and you, we owe each other.
We do. We do. But Yusef, again.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Al?
Thank you, Al.
Great conversation, and it's important. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Be safe.
Morning draws near, I rise and say my prayer. Little piece of bread to my mouth, little tea to wash it out. It's my daily tribulation, even though I'm a working man. I work so hard to make ends meet, soldier, with one suit and one shoe to my feet. Days are getting so hard, yeah, but I got to keep on pushing on this 9 to 5, working to stay alive. 9 to 5, working till the sun goes down. As the sun sets in the west, I pack my things and head on home, thinking about tomorrow's journey as I try these streets alone. Searching for liberation, yeah. Got to step out of Babylon, take a step to Mount Zion. Days are getting so hard, yeah, but I got to keep on pushing on this 9 to 5, working to stay alive. Oh, on this 9 to 5, yeah, working till sun goes